The air inside the packed debate hall in Manhattan buzzed with anticipation. Two of America's most polarizing political figures were about to collide: Karoline Leavitt, the rising Republican firebrand, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the unapologetic face of progressive Democrats. What was supposed to be a town hall on America's future quickly turned into a political showdown. Karoline entered backstage, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Dressed in a sharp red blazer and wearing her signature cross necklace, she adjusted the microphone clipped to her lapel. Her team had warned her AOC would try to dominate the conversation, but Karoline came prepared. Meanwhile, Alexandria greeted the crowd with a calm smile, but her eyes shifted to Karoline as she took her seat. The crowd erupted in applause. This wasn't just a debate, it was a battle of narratives. And Karoline wasn't going to blink. The moderator introduced the themes: climate policy, border security, and the economic future, before Alexandria leaned into the microphone, her voice smooth but sharp. "The Republican agenda is built on fear," she declared. The crowd, mostly liberal, cheered. Karoline leaned forward, unflinching. "You say we're afraid of the future," she said calmly, "but we believe the future deserves truth. Truth doesn't come from grandstanding. It comes from accountability." The room murmured. Some clapped, others frowned. "You had your chance to lead, Alexandria. And what did it bring us? Record inflation, unsafe cities, open borders, and division disguised as progress." The tension in the room grew as Alexandria, clearly thrown off, attempted to respond. But Karoline wasn't done. "You weaponize identity to silence debate, and when someone challenges your ideas, it's suddenly oppression." "It's not oppression. It's competition." Alexandria, arms crossed, leaned into the mic. "You talk about division, but what you're selling is regression. You want to take us back to a time when people like me wouldn't have had a voice on this stage." The crowd roared in approval. Karoline nodded, then picked up the mic. "I'm a conservative woman who grew up in a working-class family, told by every institution that I wouldn't make it unless I followed the liberal line. I chose a different path, and that scares people like you." The tension thickened. "Struggle doesn't belong to one party. You say you're for the people, but your policies crush the backbone of this country. Small business owners, single moms building something real. You silence them with slogans." The room fell silent as Karoline's words hit home. Alexandria's confident demeanor cracked for a moment. Karoline continued, "I'm here to make sure progress is real, not wrapped in slogans, but rooted in truth." The moderator shifted gears, trying to cool the tension. "Let's talk solutions," he suggested. Her words were articulate, practiced, and ideologically pure. But Karoline didn't match her intensity. "You talk about redistributing wealth while sipping champagne with elites who've never touched a shovel," she said. "I grew up watching my father work double shifts to keep the lights on. We didn't wait for handouts. We worked. We sacrificed. You want to punish people for succeeding. That's not equity. That's resentment." There was a long pause. Alexandria visibly shifted in her seat, realizing Karoline wasn't the easy target she'd expected. Karoline went on. "Your policies crush the middle class, the ones working to build a better future, not just chanting slogans, but creating real change." The crowd shifted again, this time in Karoline's favor. The moderator, sensing the shift, asked about public trust in government. Alexandria leaned in first, offering her take on the dangers of corporate influence over politics. Applause rang out, but the energy had changed. Karoline waited, then spoke, her voice controlled. "You preach humility from private jets, but it's hard for Americans to trust politicians who preach unity, while labeling anyone who disagrees as a threat to democracy. That's not leadership, that's branding." The room grew quieter. Karoline's words hit a nerve. "I've sat at kitchen tables where parents are deciding whether to pay rent or fill the gas tank. They don't trust Washington anymore because Washington stopped trusting them." Alexandria smiled coolly, trying to pivot. "We talk about freedom, but whose freedom are we defending?" she asked, her voice dripping with moral superiority. Karoline, undeterred, leaned in. "Government picks winners and losers, but it often picks the loudest voices, not the most vulnerable. I've met families whose lives were destroyed by red tape and overreach. Their freedom matters too." Alexandria tried to interject, but Karoline was on a roll. "Government is not supposed to micromanage morality. It's supposed to protect liberty, not define it, not curate it. You want to protect marginalized voices? So do I. But protection doesn't mean censorship." The crowd murmured, clearly responding to Karoline's unyielding stance. "You don't stop a fire by banning words. You stop it by flooding it with light," she continued, her voice steady but unwavering. Dorado, trying to regain control, asked a final question. "Do either of you believe the other truly loves this country?" Alexandria answered first. "I believe Karoline loves her version of America, but it's one rooted in nostalgia, not progress." Karoline's response was quiet but firm. "I love this country, not because it's perfect, but because it's still the greatest force for freedom the world has ever known. I don't think loving America means apologizing for it at every turn. It means defending it, not because it's perfect, but because it's ours." A single clap rang out from the back of the room, then another and another, until the audience stood, not out of agreement, but respect. Alexandria, caught off guard, could only watch as the crowd shifted toward Karoline. The moderator, visibly aware of the shift, asked one last question. Karoline, however, didn't wait for the cue. She stood. "You want bold vision?" she asked. "Here's mine. A government so small it can't crush your voice. A country where disagreement doesn't get you deplatformed, where truth doesn't change with the trending tab, where freedom means freedom, even for people you can't stand." A murmur rippled through the room. "I don't want a sanitized America. I want a strong one," she said, her voice unwavering. "One where your rights don't depend on who's in power, what city you live in, or what hashtags you use." The crowd grew still. Alexandria leaned back, no words left. Karoline glanced at the audience, then said softly, "We are dangerously close to becoming a country where politics replaces faith, where the party replaces the person, and where the government replaces the family." A silence followed, thick and meaningful. Then Karoline finished, "We can turn back, but we won't do it by shouting louder. We'll do it by remembering who we are and who we're not supposed to be." The room remained quiet as Karoline sat down. No grin, no triumph, just resolve. The lights dimmed, but the energy in the room remained. Cameras caught every second. Karoline's final monologue exploded online. Pundits scrambled to interpret her message. Conservative anchors hailed her as the voice of a new populist movement. Liberal commentators dismissed her as a provocateur, but even they couldn't deny her power. Polls shifted slightly in the days that followed. Younger viewers, especially independents, cited her performance as authentic, the only honest thing they'd heard in months. Her words echoed across classrooms and coffee shops. "I don't want a sanitized America. I want a strong one." It wasn't about winning the room, it was about changing the conversation.